Welcome back, everyone, to another session on IPA. I'm excited to have today Anthony Church. This guy has his own podcast. It's incredible. It's very much like IPA, except he focuses solely on the music world. Definitely recommend checking out the Proven Knowledge podcast. Also, Anthony is a music producer, so we have a really great conversation to get into today. And for anyone out there looking to get into the music world or podcasting, I think you're going to really enjoy what Anthony has to say. So thank you all for tuning in, and welcome to IPA Sessions. Welcome to IPA Sessions, a podcast for independent artists. As always, I'm your host, Kay Jacob. And once again, we have another incredible indie artist on the show today. This is Anthony Church. He is an indie music producer, and he is the host of the Proven Knowledge podcast, a podcast which is very similar to IPA, except he solely focuses on music and musicians, the music world, producers, songwriters. It's really, really good. In fact, he inspires the artists he brings on. They inspire. So I highly recommend that you pause what you're listening to and go check out the Proven Knowledge podcast. And then as you're coming back, welcome to the show, Anthony Church. Say hi.
Man, how's it going? I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I know that we have been struggling for a hot minute to get this to work. This is probably like our third time trying to record this.
Third
So
time's the
fingers
charm.
crossed.
Hopefully, yeah.
We're going to make it happen one way or another. We're going to make it. If we have to just say, fuck it and go live, we'll do something to make
Yeah.
it work. But we're going to get this out there. I really want to promote you and your work and your podcasts. But for now, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you. Who are you and what all do you do?
Yeah. So, yeah, like you said, music producer, podcast host. I started producing music in 2016. So I'm about 8 years in. Actually, next month in July will be 8 years since I began. So I started working with my friend and artist Jay Trey here in Northeast Ohio. And we kind of just agreed that he was going to be the rapper and I was going to produce for him. So that's kind of like how I started. I downloaded a program called FL Studio, started making beats on that, and I still work with him to this day, and I still work on FL Studio to this day. And that pretty much led me to working with different artists like from all over the world, just using things like social media and using the internet, all that sort of stuff. And I've worked with probably over 30 at this point, 30 independent artists from around the world.
That's
Just
awesome.
continued to grow my network and everything. And then the podcast began in 2020 during the pandemic. So I had a lot of time on my hands. I just got laid off from one of my part-time jobs. So I was listening to certain podcasts and specifically like music podcasts. And I thought that it would be cool to do a show where I interviewed some of the artists that I was working with at the time. So I kind of just reached out to people and, asked if they would want to do like a show and be a guest on it. Had a lot of overwhelming response of, yes, they wanted to do that. It'd be a cool idea. And I've done it pretty much every week now for 4 years. We just did 200 episodes
I was about to
in
say you
April.
have a lot
Yeah,
of episodes. That's awesome.
yeah.
Congrats
So
on your 200th episode. Good job.
definitely appreciate that. The only week I take off is usually like Christmas, New Year's week. So the end of the year, I'll take like a week to myself, and it's good because a lot of people are celebrating the holidays, so it's kind of hard to get a guest anyway. So it's like my little reset week for the year. But every other week of the year, I put out an episode, create the content, do the push on social media. And I've met a lot of other cool people doing that too, even outside of like if I haven't worked with them directly on the music side, I get to just have a conversation with them. So that's really pretty much what I do. I do some Spotify playlists, I do some other things here and there that I'm involved in, but for the most part, it's making music, putting it out, and then working with other artists either directly on their music or through the podcast. So that's pretty much what I do.
Now, we know all about the Proven Knowledge podcast, and you are an indie music producer, but you actually do make your own music as well, correct? Like not just music for other folks, but for yourself.
Yeah, and that's another thing I started doing in 2020. So it was kind of around the time when the podcast started, is I decided I wanted to start releasing my own stuff. kind of brand myself because even as a producer, you kind of have to put yourself out there in that way because you're still a brand, you're still an artist yourself, even if you're not saying words on the track. So like all my stuff, I'm not rapping or singing on it, but all the production is me. So it's either, instrumentals that I've done or I'll do like collaborations with artists that have my name attached to them. And I've just been trying to build up like my catalog over the past few years. I've done a lot of EPs and singles, and then this year I'm gonna do like my first full album. It's gonna be coming
Okay,
out in the
nice.
fall, which I'm excited about, and the push for that's
Awesome.
gonna start at the end of this month in June. So I've been
Okay,
working
cool.
really hard on that. I'm excited for it. So
We should be checking out your social media, checking out Spotify because you're going to start pushing that. Probably about the time that we actually air this episode, we do a little bit of early recording because I like to get everything together in advance. But I feel like by the time this airs, people should be able to start seeing some of the promotions for that new work. So that's awesome, dude. Congrats on that.
yeah, I
Um,
appreciate that.
Take me a little bit. I want to take a moment to just kind of talk about the Proven Knowledge podcast. Could you just kind of give us a generalization? I know that you said you interview some of the artists that you worked with, but what is the Proven Knowledge podcast? What is the show really about? How does it all come together?
So really the whole purpose of the show, well, I'll start with the brand first and foremost. I mentioned J Trey earlier, who I've worked with since the beginning. We came up with that brand name and like the whole concept in 2018. And basically what it means is combining like your logical and emotional sides through creativity. And we say like, you combine your logical and emotional sides. That's, you kind of living your best life. In being a creative, you're able to make the best art. So that's really
Yeah,
where it came from. And if you see the logo, it's the brain and the heart. So it represents those two sides coming together. And that's just where the name came from. So it was a pretty cool concept. And I remember we had our buddy Dan, who's a graphic designer. I think he lives in Boston. I hit him up and was like, "Can you make the logo for us? Because we just drew the logo on like sketch paper. We're like, we don't know how to design very well. So we need to have this logo done by someone that's good." And we've always got complimented on how good the logo looks or like how it stands out. And I always credit Dan for that because he's the one that put it together. And still, still the same logo like 6, 7 years later.
that's
But
awesome.
that's kind of how the brand began. And then when I wanted to do the podcast, like we had already been doing it for a while, for a couple of years, but we weren't consistent with it. And we didn't do like artist interviews. We would do like end of the year album reviews, like what are our favorite albums of 2018, 2019, things like that. So when I did it, I was like, I want to kind of change it a little bit and make it more consistent. So, like I said, I was just listening to different like music interview podcasts, and I just found that it would be cool to do something like that, to have those conversations. And really, the whole purpose of the show is to educate the next generation. Like if someone's out there and they want to be an artist or a producer, they look for information. They might go to YouTube and watch tutorials and things like that. And when I was, just getting started, one thing that helped me a lot was just conversations, like hearing people's experiences, how they dealt with it, how they got through it. That really helped me a lot. And it still helps me to this day. Like I look at other podcasts and other interviews from people that I'm a fan of or people that, have inspired me in the past. I look at those and I'm like, yeah, that helps me out a lot in my journey. So I can take that and apply it to what I'm doing. And that's just the whole point of my show too, is just I want people to, if you hear someone else's experience, hopefully you can take something from that and apply it to your own journey.
I
And
love
that's
it.
really the whole purpose of it in general. It's just kind of give back, and then you get to just hear cool stories, and you get to discover new artists too. So it's kind of a win-win on both sides. But I think that's really the main purpose, and that's why I know it's so important. And I've always gotten people that tell me, I discovered so and so through this episode you put out. Now we're working together. Or now I'm listening to their music, and
That's
they got connected
awesome.
with me. So
I love
it's
hearing
just
that.
yeah, it's just being able to do that. And, I never really thought that I was going to get a ton of anything back from this podcast. I really just do it out of like more of a labor of love type thing. And for me, it's like I can use those relationships to, work with different people or, do something else that I want to do musically as well. But it's just kind of cool to be able to, have the conversations. And for me, it's more like a form of therapy too, because I'm able to, see what other people are going through. If I'm going through something, sometimes you feel like in your creativity that you're the only one going through these things. then you talk to these other people and you're like, no, we're all going through the same thing, just in
Hmm.
our own way. And then we can kind of kick ideas back and forth and see how we want to move forward. Um, so that's kind of just what it is, and I kind of just aim to keep it going and keep it evolving and see what happens. But I've been blessed to be able to, talk to so many cool people and just have such a warm reception for the show, which has been super exciting. So
Yeah, I love the show. And you know what's cool is I was saying earlier, it's very similar to this podcast. We are IPA and Proven Knowledge are very much kindred spirits. In fact, you are one of the few guests that I've had come on the show that actually reached out to me through social media. We just happened to stumble across each other, and you're like listening to podcasts. And you're like, hey, this guy sounds familiar. This show sounds familiar. And you reached out to me and said, I want
yeah,
to come on and talk. And I was like, cool, what's your podcast? Send me a link, and I started listening. I was like, holy crap, we're like doing the same thing. It's so
yeah,
awesome. And
yeah,
and I love hearing that positive, the positivity that comes out of the networking and getting all these, creating a platform for these artists that normally don't get that spotlight. And you're providing this platform for them to have that spotlight and to share it with other people to be like, hey, I'm doing this, you can do it too. I think that's awesome, man.
yeah. Appreciate that, man. And that's really
um,
what it's about at the end of the day, is just kind of being able to do that for someone else. And then hopefully, they carry that energy and do it in their own way to the next person, and it just kind of keeps going.
right,
I think
the
that's what
snowball
that's
effect.
that's the best thing we can do as creatives. Like no matter what you do, you're doing it at the end of the day to, well, obviously you do it because you want to do it, but hopefully you do it to inspire someone else to do the same. You know what I mean? And just keep that positive energy going.
Absolutely. So, Anthony, I'm aware, but I don't know if we said this, but you actually hail from Northeast Ohio. But a ton of artists that you work with, they kind of come from everywhere. I've heard you talk to people from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Ohio. How does your network, when it comes to music producing, how do you go about doing that, and how do you meet these incredible artists?
So, like I said earlier, a lot of it is just through social media, mostly through like Instagram and things like that.
Literally just reaching out and saying hi.
Pretty much, I mean, since like 2019, 2000 like 18, 19 is when I started feeling comfortable to start reaching out to people and sending my music. Because before that, it was really just, practicing to make sure that I could do it and that I was going to get good enough to do it. So like 3 years in, I felt like I was good enough. I could start sending to people. So what I would do, and I still do like a version of this today, I go to Instagram and I'll find like a mutual follower and start going through their followers till I find an artist that I think is pretty cool. And then I'll send them like a thing like to connect, like an email about, if they want to work, whatever. And then I'll usually try to send to like 3 to 5 people a day, just like cold leads to be like, let me just reach out to these people and see what I can do. And I'll just go through like find a mutual follower, find an artist, reach out to them, then go through their following and just keep going down the rabbit hole. And I do that all the time. And I usually will like screenshot profiles for the next day that I want to send to and just keep that going. I've been doing that, like I said, since 2019. And I've met a lot of cool people just doing that, which is pretty cool. And being able to connect. And there's obviously other ways. Like I've had people reach out to me if they found me through the show or they've heard my music. And obviously that's gotten a lot better. But when I started out, nobody's going to just find you and know who you are if you don't have a
Yeah.
catalog out there. So you really got to do the groundwork yourself. And that's really what that was and what it still is today, because I just want to make sure that I'm, putting in the initiative to do that. But for me, social media has been important because I'm not in like a huge area or a huge city that has a lot of people, especially a lot of people that do music. So that was really how I knew I was going to get my foot off the ground, really, was being able to do that. And that's the beauty of the era we're in now, is that you can reach anybody anywhere and you don't have to be from LA or from Chicago or wherever. You could be from where I'm from is Alliance, Ohio. It's like 20,000 people, 25,000 people. And I can reach anybody in the world and just try to connect with the right people. That's the biggest thing. And I've had people get super pissed off that I reached out to them. I've had people cuss me out over email, like all kinds of stuff, but it's like you
I
just got to
was,
find the right people to reach out to. And more importantly, you got to be genuine too,
yeah.
which sometimes I would reach out to the wrong people, and I'm like, okay, I kind of deserve, that backlash because I really didn't, take the time to reach out to the right people. So you learn those lessons too, because you don't want to spam people. You don't want to be reaching out to people that you have no business talking to. You just got to be, hesitant, but have a purpose in what you're doing. And so now I definitely know that now, and it's a lot easier to get connected because you learn these lessons and you just kind of move from there. But yeah, social media has been the biggest way to meet a lot of these people I've met so far.
Well, and
So
I like what you said too, because I can relate to that where you're kind of like someone's just like attacking you. As someone who runs a podcast and I want to reach out to independent artists out there, sometimes I find people on TikTok or I find them on YouTube. I try and look up like, hey, what's your email that you have for what you're trying to do, and then I reach out. And the hardest part is trying to convince someone like, I promise you, I'm a real person. I'm not a bot. I
yeah,
try and send links to my show. I try and send like an image of like, hey, this is what I do. These are some of my artists. Do you have any tips to offer for people out there that are wanting to network and try and show people like, hey, I'm serious. I'm not an internet bot.
yeah,
Because I feel like that's a big thing we run into, especially in this world when you're trying to network with strangers through social media. That they can see that you have a site, but they don't know if it's a bot. And I've been fooled before too. I've gone and followed people and checked out their work, and then about halfway through, I'm kind of like, something seems weird about this person's page and their
yeah,
artwork, and then you find out that that's just a setup too, and it's
yeah.
not even real. And I'm like, who does that? It's so wild.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is you got to be able to show the side of authenticity and the side of humanity that you actually possess. And like I said, that starts from the beginning of just being able to reach out and like let the person know that, you actually care about what they're doing. I always look at it as you got to lead with value to them, like what's in it for them, as opposed to what's in it for you all the time.
That
I think what a
definitely
lot of
helps.
people do is they reach out and they just are looking for what they can get out of it. It's like you're reaching out to that person, you got to build value for them if you want to work with them, and you would expect the same thing in return. No, if you someone reached out to you and says, give me, give me, give me, like you're not going to give them anything because they're not giving you any value. So it's kind of just that, and just being able to just be honest and genuine, be yourself. Like don't try to be anybody else, and don't just like put a prompt in and just send the prompt and not like customize it, or you don't interject any of your personality into how you're talking to people. It's like they're not going to get back to you at all, nor should they. You know what I mean? So I think it's
Exactly.
just being unique and just figuring out what that means to you. And like I said earlier about just having intention, like having a purpose for why you're reaching out to the person that you're reaching out to. Um, because just reaching out to totally random people doesn't really get you anywhere because there's no plan behind it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be my biggest thing is just be a human being. Like don't don't act like a bot and people won't think you're a bot, I guess
Yep.
is what I'm trying to say.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. So I wanna prove to the folks out there listening, a little bit of your genuineness, some of your authenticity. What took you down this road to be a music producer? What kind of got you started? What was that spark that went off for you that said, "Hey, this is what I want to do"?
So I was always kind of exposed to music really from like an early age or just being like a fan of it myself. I remember like just hearing it at, whether it was driving with my parents in the car or at my grandparents' house, listening to the radio. And then my brother, like we shared an iPod for a while, so we would have our own like shared playlist. So music was kind of always around. I did take guitar lessons when I was younger, but I didn't stick with it. I gave it up pretty soon. I feel like I only did it for like probably 4 or 5 months. I just got super impatient with it because when you're a kid, you're not really like you don't always focus on like a craft. Like I always look at the kids that were like prodigy musicians. I'm like they had discipline, like whether that was through their parents or they somehow developed it at an early age. That's impressive because most kids are like, I just want to go outside and like mess
Yeah, we want to be
around or hang
kids.
with my
Yeah.
friends. Yeah, you want to be kids. So that was kind of me too. I didn't really have the patience for it. I didn't really take it seriously. And then like I was in choir in school and things like that, but I didn't really care about any of that stuff. But it was really around high school when I just started getting more back into music and finding my own taste in music as well. When I discovered music production, so I used like from like 2012 until like 2016 right before I began, I used that as kind of like my study years of figuring out what music production was because I knew I was like, I can't really sing. and I can't write, so I'm like, I'm not going to be a rapper, I'm not going to be a singer. Like maybe this would be a cool way to be involved in that world, would be to learn music production. So I just started studying like the producers that made beats for the artists that I listened to, figured out what programs they use, started watching YouTube videos. And then by the time that I did graduate, that's when I made that decision of like, okay, I'm out of school, what am I going to do now? I might as well start this and see how it goes. And yeah, like I said, 8 years later, I'm still going. So apparently that was a good decision.
You did
Um,
something right.
yeah, but that was pretty much, I mean, how it happened. It was just like I thought that production would be a cool thing to learn, and that it would be, something that I could actually have an impact with. So that's kind of why I chose that over like anything else.
Yeah.
And I was actually the other thing I was looking to do originally was I was like maybe I should be a writer. Maybe I should go to like XXL or Billboard and write about music, which I technically kind of do doing the podcast, doing social media. Like I have that music journalism thing in there too. But that was like the other thing. I was like maybe I should just do that and not even produce. Maybe I should just like try to be a writer or work for a magazine or something. But I knew I wanted to be involved in music, so it's kind of cool that I almost have done a little bit of both, and I always leave myself open to seeing like what could be next as well. But
Yeah.
always definitely wanted music to be involved. So
I know that you've spoken to me about this, but I feel like this is about the time that your friend Trey becomes involved because he's been a big part of your process kind of since the beginning of it, correct?
yeah, I mean, like I said, we started in 2016 together. I learned a lot through him about, working with artists, being able to make albums, like full projects, sequencing, learning like the sound of an artist, because we still work together today. And it's like I kind of know his tendencies and his sound and things like that. But you learn that, every individual is different. So I think being able to work with him early on, it has helped me a lot to where now I can easily work with a lot of other people and a lot of other different personalities and craft their sound as well, which is super
Awesome.
cool. And not a lot of producers get to do that. You know what I mean? Not a lot of
Yeah.
producers are starting out being able to work with an artist. Some people are just in their bedroom making music and they don't really have anywhere for it to go. So I think I was kind of like spoiled in a way to be able to do that. And someone I've known forever. Like I've known him for 20 years. We knew each other long before we ever decided to make music together. So that's like an actual friend who I would, that's a genuine person that's been in my life for a long time. So
Yeah.
it's like we also have that connection as well. Um, but yeah, I think it's been super cool to be able to continue making music with him, and we even just do stuff for fun. Like sometimes he'll just send me samples and just be like, see what you can make out of this, and then
Yeah.
I'll just make the beat and he'll just like freestyle over it or something. Like we don't even put out a lot of the stuff we make, because
Yeah. Just
we've done
having fun,
probably,
having a good time.
yeah, we've probably done thousands of songs, and only like maybe 100 are out there right now, and we're still putting stuff out, but we just do it. It's kind of like working out in the gym. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
just go and you don't know always where it's going to end up, but you just like to do it. So yeah,
Honing your skills. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, and yeah, I think it's cool to have someone there that you've been there since the beginning with, and I'm always down to keep making music with him as long as he's still willing to do it, and yeah, it's been cool to see what we've done up to this point, what we're gonna keep doing, I think.
So, Anthony, I appreciate you sharing your brief bit of history and like what got you into this. Now, I would love for you to take the audience and myself included a bit of a through a bit of a walkthrough with how you do things. Can you take me through the technical aspects of what you do for anyone that's out there that wants to, compose beats and be a producer and actually work with other artists to show them a level of capability? Can you kind of take me through like some of the programs you use, some of the mics that you look into, the equipment, just whatever you're willing to share to help others. And I understand, this is your process. This is how you do it. I know that there are multiple ways to go about it, but I'd love for you to share with us what you use. And then, of course, if you have any other things that you know of that others use that might be helpful to people out there listening, please, by all means, share.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. So like I said earlier, I use the audio workstation called FL Studio, and that's what I ended up downloading in like 2016. So I originally had like version number 12 now. They're on like 22. I think I have version 20 now because I got a new laptop since when I first started making music. Um, and basically, how I go about making beats or just any idea is I usually start with the melody. So I'll start with like a piano or guitar or something to kind of get the bass down, and then I'll build the drums and a bass line and whatever else it needs. I think when I first started out, I was kind of overcomplicating songs. I was putting like 20 or 30 sounds in a beat, and I realized like you can't really do that if you're trying to work with an artist because you have to give the artist space to rap or sing on it. So I'd say probably around 2020 is when I started to kind of learn how to song structure better. So now it's like four or five sounds in a beat. That's about all I'm using. Just kind of simplify it, use better samples. I use things like Splice, which is a place where you can kind of access different samples from people. I have a couple different plugins, but not too much. I mean, I kind of keep it simple in the box. I use a lot of like mixing plugins that FL Studio already has.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
my
and for
process,
those listening
go ahead.
to, I had another artist on before that mentioned using FL Studio. That's Fruity Loops, correct?
Yeah, it was called Fruity Loops for from like 1990, like seven to probably 2003, and then they had to rebrand because I think the actual like Kellogg's company came after them and was like, you cannot use the name
Oh, what a
because
shame.
it's too similar to the cereal. So they were like, yeah,
Okay.
we're just gonna make it FL Studio, and really like 2003 on up for so now like the last 20 years they've been more of like a serious actual company. And they still
That's
get a
awesome.
lot of slack from like people that use Ableton and Logic Pro because a lot of people look at it as like it's not as like serious, but it's crazy because a lot of different music makers that are big and people have won Grammys use FL Studio now. So it's a lot more serious than it was like back then. For me, it
And it
was just
sounds user friendly as well.
I was just about to say that. I was going to say it's the easiest one to use for me. And like I said, I saw people that, I was a fan of that used it. And that's why I just started watching tutorials about how to use it and just started going from there. Um, and yeah, I've never really felt the need to switch just because I'm used to it now. And they haven't really changed the platform too much over the years, which is nice. Even in the updates, they kind of just updated how the interface looks, not really the functionality of it, which is super cool. So for me, it just works, and I think whatever works for you is what you should do, whether you're using like a piece of hardware like an MPC or an SP404, whatever you want to do, or if you're in a digital audio workstation, whatever you use to get the job done, you got to just roll with that. And people always criticize or say, you're not a real producer if you don't use like an MPC or something. It's like, if you can make good music on it, do it. Like it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter if you have a bunch of hardware or software or whatever. Whatever gets the job done for you and whatever feels comfortable for you, that's what you should do. So that would really be like my advice. But I think the biggest thing for me is just keep it simple. Don't try to overdo it. Even on my own music, like I'm not trying to overdo that either, even though it's just an instrumental. I'm just trying to keep it concise, keep things simple, and kind of let the music like speak for itself. You're kind of just a vessel for the music at the end of the day. You kind of just got to let those ideas come out and don't overthink it. A lot of people try to be perfectionists. I don't think I've ever had the perfectionist mindset, which is good because that's how you get in the habit of making a lot of stuff and never releasing it, which is like, why are you even like, if you're just having fun, cool. But if you're trying to like build a career or build anything and you have that mindset, you're probably not going to get anywhere. Which,
If you don't
like I said,
release something, you're never going to learn from that. Like if you
yeah,
don't take a chance on what you have, you're never going to know if it's bad, if it's good, or if it's like got something but it needs
yeah,
work because you're not taking a chance on that. Yeah.
yeah. And you
You
got to
you need to
start
put your
somewhere
stuff out
too.
there.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. There has to be a starting point before you can actually go on the journey. And I've even worked with artists that they just will not release anything. Like we've even worked on a lot of songs and they just won't put them out because they just don't feel like they're ready. And they just don't, I don't know, I guess they just don't realize there is no perfect and you're not going to be ready. You just got to jump right in and
Got
go.
to do it. Yep.
Or else you're never going to do it and you're going to have a lot of regrets one day. But for me, I've never really had that mentality. I just want to do as much as I can while I'm here. I still believe in the quality of the music and I still want to put out things I feel good about. but I believe in the balance of quantity and quality, being able to release consistency or consistently, but have it be quality still. And just it's a term that's called building creative real estate, where you're putting things out, you're continuing to build a catalog, and that eventually is going to come back full circle to you. But you just got to keep going and keep making cool stuff. And that's kind of how I approach not just music, but social media and all that stuff. It's just with that mindset of like one day you're gonna be gone, like you're not gonna be here anymore. So what are you gonna leave behind? You know what I mean? Like any day could be your last. So today you should make something cool and like have a plan for it and put it out so people can enjoy it.
Right.
And that's just
Well,
like how it is for me. So
Well, and what's great too is music's interpretive. Not everyone's
right.
gonna like what you do, but not
Yeah.
everyone is not gonna like it. You know,
Yeah.
like you're there is an audience, and you're gonna have someone that's gonna be like, "This is freaking awesome. I love it." You're gonna have someone who's like, "Oh, this is garbage."
Yeah.
Okay, cool, but you know what? They both listened to it,
Exactly.
so
And
you
that's a
did
big
it. Put it
problem
out
with
there.
people that are starting when they hear people that are kind of discouraging them, it gets to them
Yeah,
because
stay
they
off the
don't
internet.
really, yeah, I mean, they don't really know how to deal with the criticism or understand that it's just an opinion. It's not their opinion is their opinion. They can have it. And that's how I look at good and bad opinions too. It's like it's an opinion. It doesn't affect what you're doing at the end of the day. Just keep going. Like it's you enjoy it, keep going. Like it doesn't matter.
And
Um, Go ahead.
so sorry, I was gonna say, with criticism, I was gonna say too, something that helps is trust in your own work, trust in your process, but it doesn't hurt to listen to some of the critics, even
Yeah,
if it's a bit negative. But if you see someone telling you something, but they're not coming off like a butthead, they're not being just mean to be mean. They're actually telling like, hey, this,
constructive
and this is really
criticism.
good, constructive. But I
Yeah,
think you should work on that. Listen to that. And you can play around and apply that to your other project. You can start making some music, be like, what if I try doing some of this, like they said, and then you might find yourself really good at that, and you might find yourself evolving and becoming better. Like you said, you've been doing this for years now, and it's all through that trial and error process of being like, I got to know what's good and what isn't. So, and the only way for me to know is to put it out there. You
yeah.
take that chance. That's the only
And
way to
that's
grow.
and being able to grow an audience too. Like you got to think the more people that are in the audience that enjoy what you're doing, there's going to be more that don't like what you're doing as you keep scaling and keep going up. So it's going to be something you always have to deal with, but it just gets easier over time to be able to like move through that, and you gain the confidence to say, I've done all this. Like, why would I not keep going?
Right.
So that's really what it comes down to.
Well, speaking of going and doing this for years, as someone who comes from the indie music world, this is obviously something that you put a lot of your own time and investment into. I like to ask people about finances because I know when it comes to artwork, when it comes to putting yourself out there, people do want to try and make this a career. You do want to try and get money out of this. But I think the reality is a lot of people think that like it's instantaneous, and that's not really always the case. For you, with the amount of time and effort and money and energy that you've put into these projects, into your equipment, your setup, do you feel that there is a financial benefit for you? And maybe it's not happening just yet, but do you feel that it's on the horizon, it's coming up, or perhaps it finally has broken even for you and you're starting to get some financial returns?
I'm still in the place where it's pretty like slow but steady here and there. It's kind of choppy other months, you know what I mean? Just having clients. And I think the biggest thing is you try to get enough clients to where, if one isn't working on something at the time, you can have somebody else to kind of fall back on. I'm still not in the place of being able to do it where it's generating a ton of money or to be able to like be my full-time thing. But everybody's going to get there at different times too, and I think it's another thing where people look at, what's somebody they look up to, where they're at, and that level that they have achieved, and they think, that's going to happen for them tomorrow. But that's just not reality. You got to find out what works for you and kind of go that route. I've been able to have some cool, consistent clients in the last couple years, and it's gotten better. Still not at the point I want it to be, but it's always a work in progress. I think that's what it always is for everybody. It's just a work in progress, no matter where you're at or where you want to go next. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. And for me, at this point, it's really not about being able to do that at this point. Like I'm gonna always keep music involved in my life, whether it's making a ton of money or it's not making hardly anything, just because I love to do it so
True
much.
passion.
And I
Yeah.
think yeah, you still gotta have the love rooted in everything you do, to get to that point in general. Because if you're just looking at it for you just want the money or you don't really care about any of the other stuff, but you're just looking for some type of gain, you'd be better off trying to be a lawyer, a doctor, anything that makes like actual money, because then you can just go and do that. You don't have to be passionate about any of that stuff unless you actually enjoy doing that, which there are people that enjoy doing that and they should do it. But if you're just looking for like a get rich quick scheme or something like that, there's so many other avenues that are better than music to do it, or anything creative really. But yeah, for me, that's just kind of where I am, and I'm just gonna keep trying to build a consistent clientele of people, and I'm always looking to work with new people and kind of see what happens. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's better than it was 4 or 5 years ago. You just gotta look at the little progress that you've made and say, you know, that's being done, so that means we're moving in the right direction. Um, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens moving forward, but that's
I
kind of
like
where I
it.
am currently.
Yeah, invest in yourself, and that's where
Yeah,
most of your money. And I feel like a lot of artists don't realize, like when you start out in the beginning, because you mentioned earlier too, having that professionalism to give yourself that professional look, make your work look legit. That does require you self investing, and you can
yeah,
start off doing things for free, and over time you just add a little bit by little bit. With my podcast, I started off with different microphones. I started off with different equipment. I worked with what was around me, what was free. And then over time, I just slowly invested in myself, and I've gotten better and better quality, better, with my work and what I'm presenting. And that all comes with time. So I think for a lot of artists out there, you're mostly going to be investing in yourself out of your own pocket,
yeah,
but give yourself that professional look. Give yourself the chance to show someone, like, hey, I'm serious about this, look at what I can do. Then they'll start to have financial gain. Well, Anthony, I really appreciate you taking us through your technical process of everything. Thank you for sharing, how you go about doing things. Folks that are out there listening, do yourself a favor. If you want to do what he's doing, look into the FL program. Check it out. Check out FL Studios. But there are other formats out there. There are free things that you can find, especially just if you're getting started and you're like not sure how to go about it. Find something that's free, mess around, play with it, mess it up, have fun. And then when you start really finding out what you need to do, start investing, like we spoke about earlier. Start really putting in the effort, the time, and the money that you need to give yourself that professional look. I really appreciate you taking us through that process, Anthony. Thank you. And
absolutely.
now we're going to have some fun and just, do that fun little question round that I love doing with everyone. I'm going to ask you about all the ups and downs of the music producing world and what it's been like for you. Hey, just taking a quick break. Anthony was kind enough to gift us with his song that's out right now, Horizon. It is this instrumental piece that he's been working on. It's streaming on all music platforms. Do yourself a favor and check it out. Oh, and before I forget, he was also even more kind to gift us with a little intro to his show, the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Give you a little teaser of what he has to offer. Thank you for taking this quick little break. I hope you enjoyed the music, and definitely check out his podcast, The Proven Knowledge.
Welcome everyone to the Proven Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Church. I'm a music producer from Northeast Ohio. I began this weekly interview series to give you different perspectives from artists, producers, engineers, and other individuals in the music industry. In each episode, we touch on not only what has helped the person succeed, but we also touch on what has shaped them into the person that they are today. I hope you're able to gain some real proven knowledge from the show, and that it helps elevate you on your own journey to success as well. Let's get into it.
And we're back. That was Horizon, Anthony's new instrumental music he's put together. It's a compilation of all kinds of awesome music out right now on all streaming platforms. Go check him out, like and subscribe, follow him, show him your support. And of course, if you're a musician, a singer, or a songwriter, hit him up. Links are in the show notes. And please check out his podcast, The Proven Knowledge. And now, back to the session. And my first one is, what is the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome? And maybe it's even something that you're still working on as a music producer
Yeah.
or with your podcast.
I'd say kind of going with everything that I do would be self-doubt, which I think is something a
Oh,
lot of people deal with. You know, like we talked about, dealing with things at every step of the way. That's something you always deal with at every step of the way, especially if you're trying to get into like a new chapter of your life or whatever you're doing. So you're always going to be like, am I ready? Am I good enough to do this? But usually you always are. You just don't know it yet. You just got to get started and start going, and then you get through that. But self-doubt is like, it can be the most crippling thing. And I think just everybody deals with it in their own way. For me, it's just, like I said, about being able to trust that what you're building is going to pay off and be beneficial for someone else. That's what always keeps me going is like, if I can help somebody else out there, I need to get out of my own way, even if I don't feel the best about, whether I deserve something or not. It's like if what I'm making can help somebody else out there, that's my responsibility to do that. So that's my biggest thing, just kind of getting through that. But the more that you go, self-doubt becomes a lot easier to deal with. So luckily, I think getting through those initial years has helped me out a lot. And but yeah, like when I started out, it was just, am I even going to be good? Is this even worth the time to do it?
right.
But you just gotta get through that, and then you get to the other side, and it becomes a lot more manageable, which is nice. But yeah, I'd say self-doubt because I know a lot of people deal with that. No matter what you're doing, you're gonna have that come up from time to time. So that would be the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had mentioned earlier too, the critics that are out there, and we forgot to mention the worst critic of all is yourself. Self-doubt is the
Yeah,
biggest critic that you're ever going to face. You're your road excuse me, you are going to be the obstacle that gets in your own way. Every
yeah,
time. Because that self-doubt, everyone has it. I don't care how good they are. I don't care how far they've
mm,
made it. Everyone has it. Everyone deals with it. It is a constant challenge because you're always going to have the voice in the back of your head. Even when you've done something to what you feel is perfection, you're going to be like, but could it have been better? Should have done it this way. You gotta embrace that and move forward. So yeah, self-doubt
yeah.
is a huge challenge. I definitely agree with that, man. It's a big obstacle to overcome, and it's something that you do work on regularly, and you just keep pushing through it. You are your worst
Mm,
critic, and you are your best supporter. That's how
yeah,
it goes.
yep.
You've been doing this for a while. You mentioned that you've had a love for this for a very long time. And since 2016, you started out just trying things and making music. And then around 2020, you really started taking yourself serious. You really started honing the skills for being a producer. And then on top of that, you started making your podcast. So you have a tendency to really understand the music world that you're in right now, the indie music producing world. You have a tendency to understand how podcasts work. You've been doing it for the last 4 years. You have 200 episodes. So you tend to know what to expect. But I want to ask you, is there anything unexpected that you had to face? And maybe it's something that you learned right then and there in the moment. It completely caught you off guard. You weren't prepared for it.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just understanding that usually what you think you know, especially when it comes to music, what you think you know is usually not at all like what it is. And I think a lot of people get into music and they look at people that are signed to like big labels or have like success immediately. They think that's exactly how it goes. That's the only way you can do it. But there's just so many ways that you can be involved in music and in the industry too, and not have to go that traditional route. And because we're in the era we're in now, it's just a lot easier. But really, just the fact that everything takes so much time and effort and work. Because I think the biggest mistake you could ever make is getting into this and thinking you could just do it within a month or so or like a year or so. It's like you got to dedicate pretty much your life to what you're doing. It's not to say you can't have a life outside of this, but you got to really put the time in to get the results you want. And that was like a big thing for me because I was one of those people. I just had that traditional like, oh, I should get signed and this might not be that hard. Like, but then I'm like, no, this is not at all what I thought it was. But looking back, it's like that was the best thing to happen because now I'm able to build my own thing, build my own platform, stay independent, do my own thing, and just, you put the work in and you see it pay off. You're like, why would I want to give that up to someone else? You know what I mean? When I could build it myself and really be proud of what you built when you look back on it at the end of the day. And obviously everybody, wants to do their own thing. There's people out there that they just want to get signed because they don't want to do any of that legwork. It's like, okay, that's cool and hopefully that works out for you, but I think people just got to be aware of the different ways that you can make it happen. And if you're really passionate about it and you have that work ethic, you can really build something very special. It's just going to take a lot of time to get there. Um, but just keep going and don't give up and really just have, like I said, keep that passion involved and you'll eventually see the results that you're looking for. But I think that for me, that was it, was just the misconception of, what is painted before everybody, before the general public versus what it actually is, which is a lot different once you start doing it.
I like that you expected it to be a certain way, and
Yeah.
then it unexpectedly slapped you in the face and said, that's not how this goes."
Yeah.
And
But in
that's
a good
that's
way
part of the
though. In
process.
a
Yeah,
good
it's a
way.
good thing. It's the
Yeah.
process because that lets you know, like, hey, I'm doing this, and like light bulbs start going off, and you're like, oh, I understand this now. You start grasping and fully understanding and comprehending what you're doing. You're evolving. You're growing. Your knowledge is expanding. You're proving the knowledge. Like it,
Yeah.
it works. It's proven knowledge.
Yeah.
I think that's great, man. There are these things that are just a fact of life sometimes that we deal with that you can't change anything about it. It is what it is. There's no way around it. It's there. And that is the hard reality. And I want to know for you, what has been a hard reality that you've had to deal with and accept? Something that you might have been discouraging, but you found a way to push through it, or maybe you even found a way to resolve it to continue forward. But what's been a hard
Yeah.
reality for you?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything that we've talked about as far as, building income, building your brand, and the time that it takes to do it. I think it's just all those things in one. Realizing that it's like I said, it's a lifetime commitment. If you really want to do it at that level, or you really want to build something that's going to last, it's just going to take that amount of time. I think luckily for me though, that reality hasn't been that hard because I feel like because I'm so passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work to me. It doesn't feel like, I have to put in that much effort to do it. It has become a lot more seamless over the years, which is super cool. But I think that would just be the biggest thing. It's kind of what we've already talked about, which is you gotta be prepared to make sacrifices and just build something that you believe in. And I think I've been able to do that so far, and I'm just interested to see, where it keeps evolving from here. Because like I said earlier, I don't want to close myself off and just be like, I don't want to do that idea, or I totally would never accept it. It's like if something, came to me or someone presented me with an idea, I'd really put thought into it and be like, well, how can I incorporate that into what I'm already doing, or how could I add that to my arsenal to kind of help, what I've been building already. So I think it's just a little bit of everything that, we've discussed, but like I said, the payoff at the end of the day is what you do it for, and then when you can help someone else out there, that's really where it's like, wow, that's all that work was for something, and we can keep going now. We can keep making better and brighter ideas than we made yesterday, and yeah, just continues on.
Yes, I fully agree with you, and it sounds to me like you are basically embracing the hard reality. You're embracing everything that's happening, and you're accepting it so that you can push forward. Because if you try and fight against it, it's just going to hurt you. It's going to slow you down. It's going to impede your process. So embrace it and work with it, and that's what you're doing. You're finding those moments to be like, all right, I'm accepting this. This is happening. I'm accepting it. Let's move with it. Let's work with it, and it makes you
Yeah,
better for it in the end. So yeah, embrace the hard reality. I like that. I don't think I've ever heard
yeah.
anyone really say that before. I dig that.
Can't be in denial. You just got
Right.
to take everything in stride too, and just trust the process. It's the biggest thing.
Trust the process. Absolutely. So, Anthony, I want to ask you now, what is the most valuable takeaway that you have learned from your experience? Something that's helped you grow and improve as a music producer and podcaster.
I think just being able to take things one day at a time, and not get too far ahead of yourself is a big thing. Because I think especially when you have so many ideas, you want to get them out like pretty quickly, or you have something cool that you come up with and you're excited to share it with people. But sometimes being able to plan things and really be able to execute in the right way is the best thing to do. So I figured that out just through whether it's social media or my music or things like that, just keeping like a calendar of every day, like what do I need to do today, or what are my plans for next month? Let's plan that out. And let's really like flesh it out into a real idea. So not trying to get too far ahead of myself, especially when I'm doing the show and I have my own music and I'm working with artists, I'm doing all these things all at once. It's like it's easy to get caught up in like the excitement of it all and you want to put it all out there, but it's better received when you have a real plan to go with it as opposed to just throwing things out there and expecting people to care. And it just goes back to what we were talking about with having intention behind what you do and why that's so important. So I think just being able to take it one day at a time and be patient. That's a big thing. Is just the practicing patience every single day and just seeing how that pays off is a big thing.
I dig that. Patience and organization
Yeah,
seems to be the best takeaway. I mean, and that's a great way to improve. Is especially the way you talked about earlier, wanting to present yourself on a professional level, having good organizational skills. Even with the way that you said in the beginning conversation about how you approach artists and send emails to reach out to people, you had to learn how to organize and have patience and give them a valued aspect of like, this is what I want to offer to you.
yeah,
I think that's cool, man. Patience and organization, definitely a great takeaway to
yeah.
have.
Making a
um,
daily planner is a big thing. People overlook
yeah,
that.
daily
That
planner.
saved my life, honestly. But
Yeah, got a busy calendar. I love it. And it's
yeah,
nice when you see your calendars full up because you're like, hey, I'm doing this. This is great. Earlier we had talked about the unexpected when it comes to the music producing world and podcasting, which, as I well know, there's a lot of unexpected things. But what did you expect? What did you want from your podcast and from the music world? What did you want?
I think it's what I still want, which is just to help somebody else out there and change other people's lives for the better, and be able to inspire them, and hopefully they can do the same for other people. Because, like I said earlier, eventually you're gonna be gone. You're not gonna be here anymore. So what are you gonna leave behind for people to actually consume or like you know people want to talk about like legacy, whether you call it a legacy or not. It's like what are you gonna be remembered for? So for me, that's what you can guarantee that you'll be able to leave, whether you make any money or not, or have any success or not, or if you're famous, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like what are you gonna leave behind for somebody else to find and get inspired by? And that's really what the whole music thing is all about. Creativity is all about art. That's what it's about. Is just being able to put that inspiration out there and watch it come back through other individuals. So yeah, I think that's like what I've always wanted, what still will be my purpose moving forward, no matter what I'm trying to do. Um, yeah. So
Well, IPA can respect that because that's what we want to do. We want to inspire. So I think that's great, man, to want that with your not just your podcast, but with your music in general to go out there and inspire others. Hell yeah. I like
yeah,
that. That's a great thing to want and to expect, to expect to be able to inspire other people. Because before you inspired them, someone else inspired you. So you're just
yeah,
passing that along. I love it, man.
exactly.
So what's your drive, dude? What motivates you to keep doing what you do?
Really just a love for it. I mean, if I ever feel like I don't love it anymore, I won't do it. I'll go do something else. You know what I mean?
Fair.
It's just being able to do, what you feel passionate about and what you feel like is your purpose. Because I think when you find your purpose, nobody can really tell you otherwise. Like we said about, the people having an opinion or critique on what you're doing. If you're passionate about it and you enjoy doing it, then you're good. Like just keep going. So that's really, what it is for me with music is just I enjoy it. I like helping other people out, and um, yeah, I just as long as the passion's there, I'll keep going. But if it ever goes, then I guess I got to go too. I got to go find out what else gives me that sense of joy, because that's really why we're here at the end of the day anyway. We're here to inspire, but we're also here to enjoy it. Um, and yeah, I just want to keep doing that, hopefully. Hopefully music is the thing for my whole life, but we'll see. It's a long, long journey. You never know how long you'll be here, but so far so good.
Right?
Right?
Hey, it's honest. I like that. A great motivation is the fact that you're passionate about it. So that's what drives you is the passion for it. And obviously, like you said, if that passion, tends to go away, then maybe it's time for you to move into a different direction. And hey, you accomplished something here and now you can move on. So
Yeah.
that's cool, man. I like that. I really do appreciate you coming on today. Thank you for doing this with me. I know that we have tried many times to get this done, so I appreciate the immense amount of patience that you have. Thank you for being a part of the IPA family. I love your podcast. I really do. Forbidden Knowledge is great. You have some really cool artists that I've been able to find, and like, hey, this is some good music. I want to ask you now, though, is there any advice that you would like to give to anyone out there, whether they want to get involved with their own podcast or with the music producing world, if they want to create music? Do you have anything that you'd like to say to them?
I think the biggest thing would just be, keep it simple, start small. It's really just kind of a little bit of everything we've talked about in this episode. Just invest in yourself, have love and passion for what you do, take it one day at a time. Really just all the little bits we talked about all rolled into one. And just, at the end of the day, like we said, do what you enjoy because that's all you can do. And if you keep that involved, you never know where you're going to go. You could turn it into a full career. You could make it your full-time thing. You never know, but you won't
Sky's
know
the
unless
limit.
you try. So you got
Hmm.
to keep trying and keep experimenting and um, yeah, just see where it goes. And I think you put your best foot forward, you'll get something great out of that. So
Absolutely. If you don't try, then you'll never know.
yeah,
I highly agree with that. Again, thank you so much for coming on today, man. This was really cool. Yeah, we've been talking this whole time. It's all about you. That's what the show is for. Is to be all about the artist. But please put yourself out there. Promote yourself. You have new music coming out. You have the Proven Knowledge podcast, and of course your own music and other artists that you worked with. Tell us how we can find you. How can we follow you? And of course, I'm going to put all of the links in the show notes, but please spread the gospel.
yeah. So primarily, if you want to get connected on social media, I'd say Instagram's the best place to go. So it's at Anthony underscore church 24, and you'll be able to see, the pretty much all the things I've been working on. I post over there every day. And I'm working on a lot of cool things. I mean, the Proven Knowledge podcast, we got episodes coming out every Tuesday, so be on the lookout for that. But the big thing I'm doing is that instrumental album I talked about, that's coming out officially in September. And the title of the album is called Unknown Advantage, so be on the lookout for that. And we got 3 singles coming this summer. Um, yeah, Horizon is the first one on June 28th, and then a couple others after that. But yeah, be on the lookout for that. I'm also releasing some other beats through like different collectives and labels that do like lo-fi music and other instrumental tracks. So I'll have a lot of different things coming out this summer, and then still collaborating with artists. So, there'll be placements coming out, all kinds of stuff. But those are really the big things, and just look up Anthony Church on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, whatever you use, and you'll find me, and hopefully you enjoy some of the stuff. So yeah,
There you go. I love it, man. You've got a busy, busy summer coming up. And hey, stay busy. That's good for us. I love it. Stay busy.
yeah,
For the listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. Hit up Anthony, follow his work. If you're a singer, a songwriter, if you're a fellow music producer yourself, reach out to Anthony. He is a real human being. He is not a bot and he's not afraid to chat with people. Give him a holler. And if you're a musician, hit him up. Go on his podcast. Come on mine too if you want. But definitely, if you're a musician, hit up Anthony. Again, man, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
And for everyone else out there that's listening, I really hope that you had something special to take away from this. I know that you had to be inspired to at least try. If anything you've taken away from the conversation from Anthony today is that you have to try, because if you don't, you really don't know what's going to happen. You got to put that critic of yourself, that little self-doubt critic, you got to set that to the side and push forward and just do it. You got to start somewhere. So start it, do it, get on it. Again, special thanks to Anthony. Check out the Proven Knowledge podcast. Go listen to his music, support these other awesome musicians that he works with. And for all the listeners out there, until the next time, stay golden. Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please rate and review, like and subscribe. Every little bit helps. And as always, the theme music of the show is provided by the Ericka page. And our brand new graphic designs are all thanks to Quality Artworks. Links are in the show notes. Go support these amazing indie artists just like they support IPA Sessions. And of course, please follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. That's at IPA Sessions Podcast. And if you or someone you know is an independent artist looking to promote their work or just share their story with us, please hit me up at ipasessionspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, everyone. And I hope you're able to find some inspirations for practical applications.